If you were to visit the White Rose Towers today, they look nothing like they did back in the mid-90s. Back then, the building was in serious disrepair. I've never stepped inside any of the apartment units, but judging by the lobby and hallways, I've seen much nicer alleys. The carpets were filthy. The entire place smelled of a sweaty dampness, and a 300-year-old turtle could make it up to the top floor before the elevators could. It was a place I never would have journeyed into if I wasn't getting paid for it. And I only used the elevators because I wasn't walking up 14 flights of stairs carrying hundreds of newspapers. I always made sure the towers was the last stop on my Sunday route. If I had to deliver there every day, I would have definitely subcontracted the work out to someone else. Summers weren't as bad because of the early sunrise, but colder months were much less enjoyable. The place was already creepy enough. In the dark, it was way worse. I would sit the number of newspapers I needed for each floor right outside the elevator doors as I rode up to the 14th. Then I walked through the halls, dropping the papers in front of the marked units on my sheet. I would use the stairways to get back down to the ground level. That part was always a chore itself. Not only were those heavy metal doors constantly sticking shut, but every weekend at least a few of the stairwell light bulbs would be out. This left me stumbling around in the dark in a few areas, and I had already fell down several steps on more than one occasion, never hurting myself too bad, but still. This particular Sunday started like any other. All of my deliveries were already waiting by the elevators, and I was making my way down to the exit floor by floor. I think I was leaving the 10th, headed for the steps that led down to the 9th. When I got to the end of the hall, I had to tug and struggle with the exit door before I eventually got it to open. When I did, I saw that the closest light was blown out. I looked over the railing. I could see the light wasn't working on the landing below either. Someone would have to pay me to live there. I clutched the newspapers toward my chest and used my free hand to grab the railing. I carefully started making my way down the stairs, determined not to have another accident. I only made it a few steps. A deep, strong voice called out to me from below. "Don't come down here." I froze in my tracks. "Hello?" Caught off guard, it was the only thing I could think of to say. No one responded. I called out again. "Hello?" Again, I didn't hear anything. I had a quick thought that it was my mind playing tricks on me. It wouldn't have been the first time, but that notion was put to rest when I took another step. The voice yelled up to me again. "You come down here at your own risk." I couldn't see anything, but even if the lights were working, the voice was coming from the landing under the stairs I was standing on. I would have had to continue down a half a flight and turn a 180 to even try to see who was talking to me, and I wasn't quite sure I wanted to take that chance. I decided to call out again, this time in search of sympathy. "It's just a paper delivery guy, and I'm only trying to finish my deliveries." I wasn't sure what I was expecting the voice to say in return. Almost anything would have been better than the silence I was confronted with again. I waited in the quiet another minute. My options were to head back up the steps and either use the elevator or the stairway at the opposite end of the hall to continue my route. Or I could be brave and continue down those same steps, in the dark and against the voice's stern warnings. In hindsight, it seemed like an easy choice, but I guess I was taking too long to decide. I started hearing footsteps shuffling up the stairs towards me, and they weren't moving slow. I turned around and hurried back up the steps. I fumbled around for the knob and tried to open the door. It was still sticking, and the footsteps were getting closer. I yelled out toward their sound, pleading with whoever was there to stop. I kept spinning the knob in either direction, yanking on the door as hard as I could, and then I heard someone coming up right behind me. Out of instinct, I threw the newspapers in their direction as hard as I could. I heard the thud as they connected, accompanied by a short grunt. I grabbed the doorknob once more and snatched it again. It opened for me. I sprinted down the hall at full speed, never looking back. Through my terror, I intended to yell out calls of distress as I ran down the corridor, but I don't think I did. My shoulder crashed into the opposite exit door with violent ferocity. I had no time for getting stuck again. Thankfully, these stair lights were operating, and I was still young enough to leap down a dozen or so steps at a time without breaking anything. And that's what I did, all the way down to the lobby. I ran to the front desk and told the night watchman to call the police. I told him someone had just tried to assault me in one of the dark stairways. It took the cops almost 2 hours to respond. By then, the sun was coming up and the windows and the staircases started to provide some outside light. Officers searched each floor. No one was found. That told me it was probably someone who lived in the building. I never delivered there again without a flashlight and a knife. I worked that route about another 3 years without another similar situation. Looks like it was just a one-time freak occurrence. But still.